Can you just imagine living your entire life, you've done nothing wrong, and yet somehow you're supposed to be in the shadows. You're supposed to be looking over your shoulder all the time. You can't access the same benefits that everyone else can have. You're living in fear. And just imagine one day the President of the United States saying, you are not our target. You're not our enemy. You're a part of our society.
I was brought to the United States when I was 11 years old without inspection, so without a visa. And ever since then, I have not been able to get status until DACA happened in 2012 through the executive action from President Obama at the time.
For the last 18 years, she has been chasing the American dream. She went to high school in Georgia. She graduated with honors. Then she attended Kennesaw State, where she got a bachelor's degree in political science. And she was a member of a sorority. She donates blood on a regular basis. And for the last 6 years, she's been working for an immigration law firm as a paralegal and aspires to go to law school and become an immigration lawyer. The DACA program got started because of people like Jessica Colotol, folks who are brought to the United States as children without documentation, but have done everything they can to live the American dream and build a life for themselves here. When you are under DACA, you come out of the shadows. You're no longer living in fear. So you can go out and be out in public, you can drive, you can apply for benefits, you can actually have a job. You are a legal part of this community. And that's where she's been when all of this nightmare happened.
Jessica. What about yours?
The dreamer.
Yes. Yes.
But I think that it's wonderful what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate your kind words.
It seems like it's still up in the air as to what's going to happen.
I recently found out the federal government took my current status, and so I'm fighting for my future once again.
She applied for renewal of that status multiple times, and she got it every single time. It was only this year, last month, when she applied for DACA renewal, that her DACA status was denied. I think her own words were that it came as a complete and total shock because nothing in her life had changed in the last 6 years. So she was completely confused and wondering why would her DACA status eligibility be any different now when she had received DACA multiple times for the last 7 years.
The revocation of my current DACA status and the denial of my application means that I can no longer work, I can no longer drive, and I'm at risk of deportation. Oh, pero no te preocupes por eso, estoy bien. Ok, gracias, papi. Cuídate, te quiero mucho. Bye. He's just worried because I no longer have a job, and he's concerned, and I told him that everything is fine and he shouldn't be worrying about that.
Just living in fear, not knowing what is now going to happen. That the federal government has a hammer hanging over your head, that it put there for no reason, and that anytime they could strike. And you will be sent to a country you barely even remember, and that you haven't been to for years. Like, I just can't imagine what that would feel like.
Even though I'm calm about things, I think I'm in a very risky situation. It's emotionally draining because I don't know what's gonna happen with my future tomorrow.
When they first denied her DACA, the government didn't even have the courage to even tell her why. And then when the news reports broke, they started telling every media outlet that her DACA status was revoked because she had a felony conviction. in that criminal justice process, she was given an opportunity to do some community service and to have everything go away. So she took that opportunity, and there was no judgment of conviction. She was not convicted of any felony. And when she applied for DACA status soon thereafter, she got it, because the DACA status, the eligibility criteria is that you cannot have a criminal conviction, and she didn't have one. There were no other interactions with the law. She was working, building her life. Nothing had changed. We filed a motion with the court, what we call a motion for a temporary restraining order, asking the courts to immediately restore the status quo from before her DACA status was denied. Then, when we brought this lawsuit, and they were forced to tell a federal judge why her DACA status was revoked, they admitted that Jessica does not have a felony conviction. What they told the press was not true. And I think we saw today in the courtroom, the judge was stunned. The judge asked the government's attorney every which way, about 1,000 different angles you can think of, why did you revoke Jessica's DACA status? And they could not give an answer. And under the law, when you can't even provide a reason, that's illegal. The judge said to the government, your position seems to be that you can revoke someone's DACA status because you don't like the color of the shoes that they're wearing. And the government said, yes, that's right.
Hey, Alice.
Hi, how's it going?
I'm good. What's going on?
Nothing much. I just want to say thank you for coming to the rally tomorrow. It means a lot to me. And I'm so
Of course,
happy.
I would not be anywhere else. For you, I'd do anything.
Oh, thank you. You're so sweet. And I know I can always count on you.
You'll be in everybody's thoughts. You stay strong. Tú eres más fuerte de lo que la gente piensa. No te des por vencida. I love you.
Love you too.
We are a nation of laws. We have a constitution and we have federal statutes. And the federal government, the executive branch, is not free to just completely ignore them. They cannot ignore the laws. They cannot bully these people anymore. They cannot bully the helpless. These are people who are trying to live the American dream, no different from you and I, and we cannot treat them like second-class people.
Jessica, we're still here. We're gonna put up a fight. We're not gonna give up. Be strong. Rely on your community, on your family, on your friends. And to Trump, we're not gonna give up. We're here and we're gonna stay here.
The facts of my case have not changed at all. It's their position. It's a position that they are using to abuse their power and to get me out of the country that I consider home, just like they do.
This case is so important because of the thousands of DACA recipients out there. DACA recipients are like you and me. They're not a status. They're not some foreign category. They're human beings just trying to make it in this world. Jessica has really taken charge of her own story because her heart has never been about promoting herself. It's always about how can I use what I'm going through to help the community. All those undocumented folks, dreamers or not dreamers, people living in the shadows, she's speaking in part for them and putting a face on the issue.
At first, it was a lot to deal with, but you know what? At the end of the day, there are many others like myself, and if it's not me, it's going to be someone else out there.
Hi, I'm Lucy Flores here with Free Speech TV at the People's Summit in Chicago. And I have the very great privilege of having this incredible young woman with me. I feel like that's maybe even like, I don't know, like I shouldn't call you that. You're just like, you're a woman, you're like a person in and of yourself. You're so amazing.
Thank you.
Belen Sisa, she is an undocumented student activist at ASU. and former Latino organizing person at Bernie. Too many words, too many words. But tell me, thank you so much for being here. I honestly, I follow Belen on social media. You should too. And you know, one of the things that I've just been so encouraged by, and this has been something that's been really special for me in all of my years in elected office and my time in politics, is, you know, you guys, you young people who are just out there and making it happen, and hopefully becoming us sometime
You're our
soon.
inspiration, so.
Well, it's vice versa.
Yeah.
We're just have a love fest the
We
whole
feed
time.
off
We're
each
just
other.
gonna say amazing things about each other. Like, we don't even care about who's listening. But no, I mean, it's just amazing. So one of the things that and why I specifically wanted to talk with you is because you recently posted your tax returns on social media.
Yeah.
And as someone who has definitely been a target of the hate and the trolls and just the terrible side of humanity out there, you also were a target of that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I really identified with what you were going through, because those of us who are in public service and who are out there and are really putting the good fight on behalf of people are attacked very often. But you know, you're an undocumented person, you talk about it often, you are much more vulnerable than I would ever be, and yet there you were talking about your tax returns and giving it back to all of these people. You did not just, you know, call it a day and say, I'm just going to ignore them. So tell me about that. Why, first of all, why did you decide to do that?
So the reason why I wanted to do it is because I think the moment in history that we're in, I just got really tired. I was just really angry of hearing only their side. And this year when I did my taxes, like I have been doing since, you know, the past 5 years since I've had deferred action, I wanted to show people the other side. I wanted to tell people the truth. I wanted to bust the myth that undocumented immigrants don't pay taxes. And we don't contribute to this country, because we have been forever, basically.
Right.
And the only thing that you ever hear is that we leech off of the system, that we take benefits that we shouldn't be able to get, when in reality, people don't know that even if we pay taxes, we can't get any of those.
Right.
Like workers' compensation, like unemployment, like Social Security.
Right.
And the position that I'm in is temporary. And even if I did need unemployment one day and I paid into the system, even though I did it the right way, I still wouldn't be able to claim that.
Right.
And so it was being tired, it was just the perfect moment, and there was just so much hypocrisy that surrounded 2016 and all of these political campaigns. And I wanted to give a voice to all the people who didn't have one.
Did you see yourself being as active as you are right now? Did you ever, you know, what was your entry into becoming active in your community, becoming this the Latino outreach person for the Sanders campaign? What took you in that direction?
I didn't picture this at all. I was in a complete different stage in my life. 5 years ago, I was graduating high school. I went to high school in Florence, Arizona, just a few miles away from the Immigrant Detention Center. I was very powerless. I felt like I didn't really know what to do. I didn't have the tools, I didn't have the role models. I was kind of isolated where I was. And so what took me there was really being inspired by the brave and courageous undocumented youth who fought for DACA, who made President Obama make that action, because they're the real champions. They're the ones who made that happen. And it's so overlooked sometimes, I feel like, but they're the reason why I'm the person that's sitting here in front of you today. They're the ones who taught me, they're the ones who inspired me, who empowered me. And from there, it was just, I was unstoppable. Once I was shown the way, once I was basically inspired and saw that other people were doing it too, that I wasn't by myself, is when everything changed. And I went on to do things that I would have never expected me to do, like work for Bernie, like make that viral post, like stand in front of the state capitol and call out Jan Brewer because she wasn't giving us driver's licenses, even after we had DACA. It's always a constant defense. And I think that that's taught me in a way.
So what is your one call to action for people who want to get involved, they want to figure out how to do something, they just don't know what to do, or maybe they just they're not familiar with the process, or maybe they're scared. What's your one thing that you tell people when they say, how do we instruct these folks, everyone here at the People's Summit?
Yeah.
What do we tell them to do?
I think local. We've seen that nationally, it's going to be an uphill battle. We don't know what this administration is thinking. We've seen that they're not our allies at the moment. I would say that the biggest change that you can make is by pushing the people that are elected closest to you, like your city councils, like your governors, like your state legislatures, and connecting with local organizations that are already doing the work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there you'll be guided into, doing what's best for the community. Sometimes we want to help so badly that we get blinded or kind of like try to cross over and do our own thing.
Yeah.
But the most powerful thing is to go to the people who are affected and learn from them and follow their path, because they know what's best for their community.
Absolutely. Well, I could not have said it better myself, and as a former state legislator, I appreciate the shout out to the locals. But it's so true, right? Those aren't the sexy, those aren't the campaigns that are getting the millions of dollars and campaign commercials, but they're the ones that make the most decisions that impact you on a daily basis. So, so thank you for that. I think it's an amazing and definitely poignant and message that we should all take from the People's Summit, and I think it's the message that we're trying to give. So thanks for tuning in. Thank you, Belen. Sisa. Find her on Facebook and other social media channels. What's your
Twitter,
Instagram.
Okay. It's Belen Sisa on Twitter
Belen
too.
Sisa, there you go. Follow her. She's amazing. Hi everyone, I'm Lucy Flores here with Free Speech TV at the People's Summit in Chicago. I have with me Marissa Franco. Do you like? There's some people who want their names to be said, in the traditional Spanish way, and or some who don't care, and some who are like, no, it's Marissa Franco. How do you like your name to be said?
You said it great the first time.
Marissa Franco. All right, that's important. There's something. This is not the topic that I wanted to get into, but it's just kind of interesting. Is this idea that we don't respect each other's name and how important our names are for identity, right? And actually that inadvertently led me to something that I do want to talk about with Mi Gente. So Marissa is co-founder or founder?
Co-founder.
Which one? Co-founder of MiGente.net, which is this incredible organization based in Arizona, correct? Not based, yes?
Based in Arizona, but national.
Yes,
Yep.
Based in Arizona, does national social justice work. Intersectionality is the key to your organization. But before I ask you to tell me just a little bit about Mi Gente and exactly what it does, I read something really interesting about the way that your name was decided on.
Yeah.
Right? And it actually just like popped in my head because we were talking about, how important your name is to your identity and how important it is to respect that. But there was like some back and forth about, because Mi Gente is spelled is a J, with a G in Spanish. That's correctly, right. But you decided to spell it with a J and then make it one word. Tell me about that.
So the organization almost split before it even started. And it essentially split between people who were born outside of the U.S., people who are immigrants and people who are pochos like me or Chicanos.
Yeah.
And so then the ones that were born, immigrants were like, I learned it this way. People always disrespect the language. My teachers forced me. I learned it's not with the J, it's with the G. And then the pochos were like, no one ever taught us. So it was the organization almost split. But I think when you say Mi Gente, that's very known. It's very colloquial. It's very understood. And you're talking about my people. It's in songs. It's in culture. Right. So we loved the fact that it was so known. But then it was like, if you use something that's so known, it can be really boring.
True.
So how can we spice it up? And just seeing how also language, and particularly in Spanish, it's so played with, and it's alive. And so it felt like, let's do something different. It obviously is a tip towards something that people are recognize very well. but it was just playing with it to make it distinguishable.
Yeah.
But then politically, it was like, mi gente is fighting for all of our people.
Yeah.
But because of the politic of the organization, we understand that at this point in time, not all our people are going to come in.
Right.
And so it's like fighting for all our people, but it's
Yeah.
also like a particularity and like in terms of what we're trying to do in this moment.
Yeah.
And then we jokingly say that the J is for joteria, and the J is for justice.
Yeah.
And sometimes
J for all
jalapenos.
kinds of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And so tell me then, what does the organization specifically do? How are you founded, and what do you focus on most right now?
So the founders come out of the immigrant rights movement, specifically like fighting deportations. And President Obama had announced DAPA, the Deferred Action for Parents of U.S. citizens. And it was obviously a victory, but also very bittersweet. A lot of our people were left out, and it created this whole new, the whole felons, not families. And so I think a lot of us were grappling like with what's next. It was clear that just escalating wasn't going to necessarily work. Like victory sometimes is a reset button, so you have to start over.
Right. Yep.
And so we were grappling with that. Where do we go next? What happens with all these people that actually came into the movement, not just dreamers, but actually people who are of different lifestyles, different age, different de todo. So we're grappling with that. And then at the same time, I'm Chicana. And I was coming back from Denver, Colorado, a few weeks after Jessie Hernandez had been shot. She was like a 14-year-old, had been accused of stealing a car. Cops surrounded them, shot her up, and just killed her. And I was just
Where was
really
this?
in Denver.
In Denver, okay.
And I was thinking a lot about her because I related to her,
Yeah.
She was probably the child of immigrants, but not an immigrant.
Yeah.
She was killed by police, but obviously a Latina. And she was queer. She was gender nonconforming. And so I just was like, there's people going to have their name in her mouth for a few weeks, but no one will really claim justice for this child. So it just was a very big, like, there's a lot of people falling through the cracks. And then you have this moment with immigrant rights where it was like, how are we going to actually take this to the next level? Because I think that the tremendous work done by undocumented youth and then like broader families like has been very, very, it's been powerful.
Right,
but how can we
absolutely.
actually build more political power? And it felt like engaging and actually addressing this piece around Latinx people felt like a massive gap. And so that's where Mi Gente, the idea of it was born.
And so one of the projects that you worked on recently, or I guess I shouldn't call it a project, but one of the very really important campaigns that you worked on recently was the Joe Arpaio re-election in Phoenix. And for people who might not be aware, Joe Arpaio is this really, really awful sheriff, very much subscribed to this tough on crime, but he even took it a step further and really made it a pattern and practice to dehumanize as much as he possibly could people who were in his jail system. And of course he was incredibly anti-immigrant, was a supporter of SB 1070, a Trump supporter. So just a very, like, I don't say this nonchalantly. I don't call people bad people just as practice, right? But the things that this person did legitimately, in my opinion, characterize him as a bad person. And your organization was instrumental in organizing for, and this was in 2016.
Yep.
And so Hillary Clinton did not ultimately end up taking Arizona, but yet you still managed to oust this guy and get a pretty decent person elected instead. So how did you manage to do that? How did you, the people are always asking for the secret. How do we activate our community? How do we activate millennials? How do we, so how did you?
So in 2010 with SB 1070, Arizona was called the state of hate. But in that year, the resistance that was unleashed, I think you saw that like 2016, 6 years later, it was, yes, maybe there's elements of the state that is a state of hate, but also it's become a state of hope. And that's because locally, there's been generations of activists who have been politicized. There's been new organizations that have been formed. And so we were really proud to be able to come in and support that. Groups like Center for New Leadership, Puente Arizona, Lucha, that also want to raise the minimum wage in a state like Arizona in a year where, Trump won and won it pretty resoundingly.
Right.
So it was done through sustained organizing. It was done through sustained, efforts of like leadership development. And the Basta campaign, I think the most important two things I would say about it is it was front and center, led by people who Arpaio had targeted.
Yeah.
It was like the people who he had targeted and who he had abused, who kicked his ass out.
Right,
And I think that was the difference in that, in the organizing that's turned the tide in Arizona. And then the second thing is that Arizona is like a lot of voter registration, a lot of youth knocking on doors, you have that whole thing. And then it's also the place where people have sat on the street and said, you're gonna have to take me. So there's been like this coming together of folks that do direct action and civil disobedience with folks that do more of the traditional voter work and combined it. And I think that was something that we really want to play with in the future.
So I think that's really instructive. Right now the Democratic Party, progressive organizations, funders, people who write those six-figure checks, but then also those people who came about in the Bernie structure of the $10 and the $27, and everyone who's collectively trying to make a difference. I think my key takeaway from what you just said is that you mentioned 2010. That was 6 years ago, and then you said sustaining. I mean, this isn't something that you can just do every 4 years, right? This is something that you invest in those communities, and you invest with the people who are doing it, and you invest with the people who are being affected. I think the big question is, just making sure that people get involved in some way. For mi gente, very briefly, because we're running out of time, but in 30 seconds, what are the one or two things that people can do to get involved through Mi Gente, or learn about Mi Gente, or some kind of, that one takeaway so that they can make a difference in their communities like it was done in Phoenix in this particular race?
I think the best thing we can do to escape the cynicism and despair of this moment is to join things.
Yeah.
I think join anything. I think Mi Gente is an option. There's many options. We're trying to build a vehicle that both has national connection, where you feel like you're part of something bigger, but also has a local piece.
Yeah.
And then in 2016, I think we're really gearing up, and that's going to be a great place for a lot of people to plug in. 2018. Yeah. I think particularly what we're going to focus on is it doesn't matter that you're Flores and I'm Franco, and that we say we're for immigration reform, and we get to be called, we passed the test. It's like we want Latinx leadership that are lifters and not climbers.
Yeah.
That have a broader politic, and so we're really going to be looking for that. So I think there's a ton of places for people to plug in.
That's fantastic. Well, if you want some more information, go to mijente.net. Marissa, thank you so much. This has been amazing, and you just are doing incredible work, and keep at it. And all of you out there, you can join too. So thanks so much for tuning in.